Welcome to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks so much for tuning in to Tyrompers No Limit Podcast. It's episode number 84. Guys, we got a special treat today, one I'm really fired up about. This is my main man here, Rian Stone. I recently put out a thread. I had so many people tag this guy on that thread. Led me down a deep rabbit hole. I've been researching this guy. I really like this guy. I think we'll agree on a lot. Maybe we'll have some different takes on other things, but I think this will be really fun. This is a man that was raised on a ranch in a small town. He has 2 university degrees, joined the Navy, sailed the world, built a loving wife and family, 3 awesome dogs, helps men, thousands of men over the years develop skills to create the best version of themselves. He runs communities, does a lot of work. I'm going to let him introduce himself because I could talk about him all day. But thanks for joining the pod, brother. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much. I guess I could put it easier than that. You guys have heard of the Red Pill? And I'm sure you've heard of like Fresh and Fit and Andrew Tate and all those guys. Right. Those guys are wearing it like a skin suit. And so there's actually a decent body of work in there about a lot of guys who've worked on their sex lives and their marriages. And so I'm the guy who's trying to make it C-SPAN level boring and bring up the actual stuff that's been done, as opposed to the clown show nonsense you see. That's kind of how I like to describe it.
Okay, that makes sense, man, because when I initially clicked on your profile around and I saw like, the red pill, the black pill, whatever you call this stuff, I kind of thought, oh man, this is going to be some nonsense. And I want to get into some of that too, like the green line stuff. I don't know where you fall on this, but I always hear a lot of this stuff, which I think some of it's fine, some of it's funny to me, but you're way more of like practical take, like, hey, get yourself fit, communicate, give us just like a kind of rundown about who you are, what you're about, what you coach men on, man.
Well, I think the first thing is, I don't want to, can I swear on this? Or actually, you know what? You don't like swearing, I'm assuming. Hey, man, I'll just skip it.
You know what,
I'm
man?
not an effing clown.
Timeline PG, but you do you, brother. Go ahead.
All right. I'm not a clown. I don't like those guys. It's a lot of the guys had the same story, right? Like, generally speaking, you're attractive enough and you learn how to get through, you get yourself a girlfriend, you get married, all that good stuff. And then, eventually sometimes something hard hits. You reach that level where you're like desperate enough to just type into Google, like, why won't my wife do this? Or why won't this happen? Or why won't this? And then you find your way into this little space. For me, it was the Red Pill. And then you read up on a bunch of authors. Everybody knows Rollo Tomasi, but most people don't know other guys like Ian Ironwood, Athol Kay, Whisper, Human Sock Puppet, all these guys. And it turns out there was just a bunch of guys who used to do like pickup artist stuff back. You remember that back in the old 2000s?
I actually remember watching that show. That dude wore that crazy hat, right?
Mystery. Yeah.
Mystery. That dude was funny, man.
So it was neat. He ended up, and all these guys did was like, our dad and our uncles and our brothers, nobody ever taught us how to talk to women. They always just say, go up and be yourself. And that didn't help. So they like broke it down to like an autistic level, like really systemized it. And that really resonated with the Nintendo generation who, I don't know if you ever played Nintendo, but like that was all rote memorization, stuff like that. So it really kind of appealed. And for me, I was in the military and I was sailing like 189 days out of the year. And so it's really hard to date when I'm like, hi, it's nice to meet you. Go on a nice date, go out to dinner. This is nice. Can we do it 3 months from now when I get back from task group exercise or op altair or something? And so I had 2 choices. I'm like, either I'm gonna just sit at home or sit at work, jerking off, or I'm gonna learn how to make dating faster. And it kind of was like a nice way to game it. But anyway, so a lot of guys were in that boat, eventually grew up, found jobs, and they're like, wow, this like goofy pickup stuff actually helps me negotiate with my boss for a raise, or other things like that, or how to deal with my wife and how I'm raising my kids. And then everybody just kind of got together and kept the ball rolling. And guys like Dr. David Buss and Dr. Cindy Minson started talking about evolutionary psychology, and Rollo Tomasi eventually put the 2 worlds together, like the old pickup artist world and then the evolutionary psychology world. And then people started learning, like, I was just here to meet women, and now I'm kind of learning about the human condition and realizing like a lot of guys were being let down by their church or their parents or their schools. Almost like, I don't know if you noticed this, but like a lot of people don't seem to like guys like at all.
There's
weird
war on masculinity, and I think that's very intentional right now. We can kind of get into that if you think. Why do you think that is?
Yeah. I try not to think about it too much. I always find why is a stupid answer. I just know it's there, and then the how is a better one. But best I've seen people come up with, it's mostly finance, money. Women make 80% of the spending decisions of the household. Women have the greatest amount of credit card debt. if you watch like MasterCard, they usually have their annual, this is from my other career where I learned about this one. They have their annual credit reports that they give out about, global credit. Women were like a $14 trillion industry. Meanwhile, guys were like 3.5.
Wow.
And so if you're a marketer, you really, it doesn't matter if you're selling Gillette razors or Bud Light or tampons or whatever. It's like you always sell to women. And so everybody is catering to women because women spend all the money. And naturally, a lot of women hate their husbands, or at least like to pretend they do. And so that kind of, angry, I hate all men thing kind of really appeals to that. And then, the type of chicks that just love feminism and hate men aren't helping things. But arguably, I think it's mostly an economic issue. But I mean, it doesn't matter. It's there. So you just kind of build. And I think they called this Rule Zero. It was like back in the day, there was like everybody had their forums to talk about this stuff, or subreddits. And there was always like a Rule Zero in the background. You're either here for a positive male identity or male sexual strategy, or you're not here at all. And so I kind of like that. So no matter what, you could talk about anything, talk about any issues, talk about whatever, but you kind of had to be there for the right purpose. And it kind of kept things mostly on point until about 2016, which I'm not blaming Trump for that, but oh man, that train got started. People kind of rolled with that one.
The whole world turned over then, man. I want to hit on one thing you said is a lot of the guys in this sphere, you kind of see them as clowns or just actors. And I kind of have this saying, man, that Andrew Tate, I think is, you can learn things from him. I think he has some really good advice. And then other things that he says about, getting out of the matrix. I think that dude is trapped in the matrix, man, more than anybody, right? Like he's buying all the cars and the watches, and he's got this lifestyle that's kind of crazy, but come to this kind of self-help or this red pill kind of community. Is it mostly that are like broken kind of guys that are trying to build themselves back up, or who usually finds their way to this community? I guess
it depends who you ask. Like for younger kids, it's just kids who have no guidance. There's nothing. And so he's the first guy who's like appealed to them. Now, granted, full disclosure, he and I do not like each other at all. Like I've got a little video I show off every podcast of basically him. He was on a friend of mine's podcast, Rich Cooper, calling me an asshole for like 45 minutes.
This is Andrew Tate?
This is Andrew Tate, yeah. So I made like an advertisement for my podcast out of it. And I think it's the funniest thing ever. I've got like a couple of them, Matt Walsh and a whole bunch of other guys. I always enjoy it because, here's the thing. He kind of learned same as everybody. You kind of find this author, Rollo Tomasi, and you work on from there. He just took, in the same way that you see a lot of those like fake evangelical preachers stealing bits and parts from the Bible to make them sound better, to sell like whatever merch they're selling to their evangelical audience, even though they're not Christian. He's kind of doing that with the red pill stuff. So that's why when you're like, what's weird? Some of his advice is good and some of his advice is just kind of clownish. It's usually because the stuff that he took was good. He stole from Rollo, which it's kind of a big running gag. I don't know. It is what she is. Yeah. I will say this though. I don't know. They just arrested another guy, Coach Red Pill, who was doing the same thing. And how come every time the Matrix takes somebody, they got to mess up your hairdo, man? I don't know if you ever look it up. Look up like Coach Red Pill arrest and look up Andrew Tate arrest, and they're just their fades all messed up. It's just weird. Pat Stedman was another one. It's a lot of clowns, a lot of people doing stupid things, and then getting themselves in trouble with the law because controversy sells merch. And what's more controversial than 33 Bugattis, but you can't get away, right?
I think I look at a guy like Andrew Tate too, and I say, what can I learn? I think people are neither good nor bad. I think this is about like Trump too, right? Like people, I always say, if you can't tell me one thing you like about Trump, you're not a serious person. If you can't tell me one thing you like about somebody, you're not a serious person. So I think these people that kind of put people in these camps, they're the worst person ever, the best person ever. I think Andrew Tate is probably good for some guys. Maybe guys that just need to get up off their butt and work out and learn to be physical and things like that. But then I do think some of the things he says has got to just be for shock effect. Like there's no way. He's a smart guy. He doesn't believe some of the things he's saying. But I see this in this kind of red pill, black pill community because, brother, I'm going to be honest with you.
Oh, it's trash.
The first thread I ever had that went viral on Twitter, man, I had maybe 10,000 followers. And I wrote some thread about how marriage is a cheat code. And like, dude, my wife makes me better. I make her better. I woke up the next day, bro. I had 300 tweet quotes from these guys calling me a simp, this, that. And a lot of them were like following Roland and following a lot of that community. So why do you think that community kind of goes towards that, maybe
Oh,
negative.
well, here, I always like this. I like this because it's absolute dog shit. I'm no argument there. Most of the people are horrible, but like if you're in a space, like it's literally the last chance. Everybody's like, this is where you guys are making like guys who do this and do that. And like, well, everywhere else in his life, do you think people go to the internet first? They go to their parents, they go to teachers, they go to coaches, they go to their priest. There's like a chain of people, like a dozen long, who have all failed in the primary duty of helping guide guys towards a better identity and a better life. And they all had to fail until you end up on the internet with a bunch of dudes running their mouth on a podcast with a camera and a microphone, So it's not even that the space is bad. It's that it's like literally the last stop before Elliot Rogersville or inceldom or whatever you want to call it. So it's just kind of one of those things you have to accept that it's going to be the worst of the worst there. And most of the people don't want to be better. They don't want to improve. They just want to be angry and they want to be validated. And that's why, and to be fair, from the red pill, where's like the rule of thumb is marriage is a bad deal for men, which a lot of guys misinterpret as saying don't get married. And I don't like that. Not because I don't think you should. Like me, I'm common law married, so it's the same thing. The marriage was thrust upon me. And as far as making it better, I mean, we can talk about that, but if I just start telling guys like don't get married, then that makes me no different and makes any red pill guy no different than any other guy who's telling you what to do. It's just replacing one authority figure for another. And the whole point of this was supposed to be that you don't need a role model. You don't need an authority figure. You don't need somebody who's telling you how to live a good life. Because frankly, most people's advice is horrible. Outside of this, every advice everywhere is horrible.
Well,
99% of it.
Yeah,
and so by listening to anybody but yourself, all you're doing is giving them the keys to your life. And if you make a mistake, they're not going to take responsibility for it. So if it's going to be your fault regardless, you might as well at least do what you think is in your best interest and not what some goofball's telling you. But again, that's lost on a lot of people and it's really kind of subtle. So it's annoying. But yeah, the hate's part of it. It's pro wrestling. You know this.
Yeah,
when you woke up, you weren't even you. You were that ex that left me in high school. You were like that's my dad who went out for smokes and never came back. I'm gonna yell at him and I'm gonna feel good. It's like yelling at Hulk Hogan and Roddy Piper, and it felt good. And you wake up. I don't know how like personally you took it, but I kind of just look at it that way. It's like, oh wow, I guess I'm the heel for today. Yeah.
I mean, if you I got 120 some thousand followers at this point, so it doesn't.
Congrats.
You get used to that, man. Like the first couple times, you're like, dude, why are these people angry at me? This doesn't make sense. But then I think it's part for the course, right? But
yeah,
one thing you said there that I'd like to touch on, man, first is I think you need to take advice with a grain of salt. And I always say this to every one of my videos. They're like, dude, this is what works for me. I'm going to share it. Maybe you take away part of it. Maybe you take away all of it. Maybe you take away none of it. But you need to make sure it works for you, right? And so these people that kind of come onto these communities and say, well, Andrew Tate does this, I'm going to do it too. Maybe that doesn't work for you, man. Like you got to find what works for you best for your mission in your life. So I love that you said that. It's not like
that's
one size fits all, man.
It's probably the most red pill thing you've said. There's actually 2 points to this. The first one from a guy, Whisper. He's probably the most important guy in the space that nobody's ever heard of. He's come up with a lot of the stuff that everybody did here, and he's kind of done it through his own life. He lived like a Patrice O'Neill kind of thing. He had 2 girlfriends living with him. Really good source of information. The first one he talks about is like, you must put this bucket on your head right now. And it's a mental model, which if you guys have never heard of the phrase, it's like the way our brain works. We think in narratives, like stories, how storytellers, cavemen telling each other, that sort of thing. Or what would Jesus do is a great example that everybody kind of knows. And then the idea is, as a shortcut, our brain uses narrative structures in order to anchor our decisions. And that's why for Christians, what would Jesus do? You think about that. And if you don't know what to do, you kind of follow that. And as long as it gets you a good enough result, it's good. So the bucket on your head example is there's somebody telling you how great this bucket is on your head. It's a metaphor for like Andrew Tate, an example, or me or you or anybody. They're saying inside of it is great and your life will be happier, but you can't see in the bucket unless you put the bucket on your head. So what do? Like, how do you make a decision when you don't have enough information? Like you said, how do you know if it's in your best interest? And then the idea is you just look at the person. All the things they're promising, do they have it? And if so, then okay, maybe try it out. And if not, don't. Now, in the Tate example, this is my personal advice and not like a red pill advice, because I try to keep the two separate. What did he do? He made a lot of money, a lot of girls. There was that issue with him like beating up his girlfriend that he's like, that didn't happen. And she's like, no, it didn't. But then they say they did. I don't know. Then there's the arrest, there's the money laundering, all that stuff. End of it all, he's in jail, huge international thing put on him. Like, is that a particular bucket you want on your head? I would argue no. Maybe somebody does want to live fast and, burn the candle at both ends. It's up to them. But for the most of it too, and this is the second one where it's just like, you got to try it first. Like 50 to 80% of what somebody is telling you should already resonate with your own experience.
Yeah.
Because if 100% of it is just, what the heck is he talking about? Then chances are you're just buying into a cult. Nobody wants to buy into a cult. Yeah, workout guy is telling you got to stand on a Swiss ball doing squats with one weight in each hand out extended. You're like, it doesn't really jive with anything I know about working out. You're probably not going to try it. But if he's got like 80% of your workout down and he's talking about it, and he's like, now try adding this to it. And you're like, okay, it's less commitment. It's something I can try myself to see if it works. And I think that's what a lot of guys are missing. They're so desperate to have somebody tell them what to do, like a dad figure. Jordan Peterson, great example for that. People were treating him like a dad. And he wasn't. He's just a guy. He's just a psychologist. He's a Canadian. It's like, whatever. Yeah. But yeah, if you're not willing to try something yourself and then take your own accountability, because if something doesn't work, you're ultimately going to be responsible for it. You can't blame, Jordan Peterson, because I cleaned my room and now my life's not great. What the hell? He's like, dude, like, what do you want from me?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, man. And I think in my life, I'm on a 5 or 6 year self-development journey myself.
Congrats. How's it going?
Yeah, good, man. Really well.
Awesome.
From where I was 5 or 6 years ago, man, for sure. In all the areas of life that I've wanted to win at, I've kind of eliminated a lot of other things and run towards those. But in that process, what I've found, man, is I find people that I emulate and I see they're maybe at levels that I want to be. Yeah. And I take bits and pieces, right? Some of them work, some of them don't. But I emulate a lot of those things. So I think I watched a podcast with, Zuby, who that is?
Yeah, I know Zuby.
Yeah, I love
Champion
Zuby.
Powerlifting. Best moment ever.
Yeah. So he did a podcast with Andrew Tate, and I thought it was fascinating to watch those two, kind of talk. Zuby has a very calm mind and a calm demeanor, and I've gotten a chance to hang out with him a few times in Vegas. And I thought, Andrew Tate talked on that podcast. I love waking up stressed, and I love having this. And I'm like, I don't really want that, man. I want to have a peaceful mind and a calm life. So, okay, I'm going to be more attracted to learning things that this other guy does, And you can just find people along your own journey that are doing things. Look, man, you're obviously a masculine, strong guy, built an audience, runs an online community. There's probably other guys out there that are going to say, hey, I want some of those things. Okay, what's Rian doing? What's he doing that I'm not doing? How can I bridge that gap, right? Well, maybe
Ryan's got it easy. All you got to do is spend 5 years on a ranch, be a graphic designer for 3 years, do a 13-year naval career, then do some corporate work, and then author 2 books, and then you can do it just as well.
There you go, man. 20-year vision for all you young bucks.
20-year vision.
That is something where a lot of guys don't want to put in the work, I think, to get there. I do want to hit one thing you mentioned, because I think this is a hot topic now. Men getting married. Because I'm hearing this more and more, man. And, I'm coming up on 9 years of marriage.
Congrats.
I do think, yeah, thanks, man. And, we have 3 awesome kids. And I'll be honest, man, my wife at this point in our life, dude, she sees a perspective I don't see. She makes me better. I trust her fully. I think she would say the same about me. I encourage her. I make her better. Marriage for us is awesome, bro.
Yeah.
But I'll be honest. I do have other people who in my life, man, I see guys that have worked their butt off to have a great marriage. In fact, just hop off a call an hour ago with a guy, his wife of 12 years ends up cheating on him. Now she's getting half his stuff. He only gets to see his kids half time. That's a rough deal. Yeah. And I think, a lot of guys are going into marriage now thinking, man, 50% are ending in divorce. This is not a great deal for me. And
no,
so
it's not.
What do you say to guys like that? Or what are you, what's the message, I guess, around that for you?
Well, for me, I always have one question and nobody's ever given me an answer. It's, what do you get out of marriage that you don't already get out of a long-term relationship? Like, what additional thing is? Everybody always says the same things that their wives kind of tell them. And I don't take offense by any of this. I'm just explaining the conversations. They go, well, you need a marriage to have kids. I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. Like, bastard children. That's not a thing since 1786.
I'd say
so you can have children outside of marriage. And they're like, yeah, but the statistics, and they always point to statistics. Statistics say this and that. I'm like, you can't live your life by statistics, because statistics are great on the macro, but on an individual level, they're basically useless. And that's assuming the guy who took the stats did it properly. That's assuming the guy who interpreted the stats is doing it properly. And that's assuming the infographic you got it from, like that's a lot of people to get one thing wrong.
In my college stats class, our professor said day one, watch. And he took the same example subset of data and he proved
Yeah.
one point and he proved the exact opposite point just on how he used the stats. So
Yeah, it's
I think
crazy.
there's something to that, man. I would say this about marriage is I think women foundationally, if you make them feel secure, safe, cared for, like they're number one, like they know you're not leaving out the door,
Yeah.
that allows them to open up a lot more and to trust you fully and to take that mission together, that kind of legacy and journey. So I don't know if that's a good answer.
No, it's a good
Satisfied or
answer.
not.
But it's the same situation here. And I'm not saying this to be adversarial. It's just kind of like, is that the only way to get that? And this is kind of where a lot of the red pill guys just kind of approached it from that perspective. All right, so girls like security. It's technically a dual mating strategy. Dr. David Buss talks a bit. Rollo coined it as like alpha fucks, beta bucks. Essentially, girls want both like sexual desire and relationship comfort. And the idea is they want to get the best of both. If they can get it from the same guy, that's great. But increasingly, what's happening, and like your cheating client example is one, where sometimes you can't get it from both, and you don't always want it to the same levels for all your life. So maybe you meet a guy, great father, great with the kids, and when you're like 28 to 32, and you're like in baby rabies mode, that's the best thing ever, and he's the greatest guy. But then you hit 35, and you kind of have that resurgence of like fear of missing out in party years. And now you want the more exciting guy. Like it's a minefield. So then you have to ask yourself, is marriage the optimal way to get there? Now, I'm arguing no. I'm not going to tell a guy to do it or don't do it. It just turns out that you can still provide that relationship comfort without it. And a lot of the work we did was based around finding ways to do that. Now, whether a guy still wants to get married, that's up to him. But even if he is married, you're still going to have to provide comfort, because the piece of paper on your guys' nightstand and the ring on your finger isn't providing comfort. You are. So ultimately, it is always just up to you. And that also helps. Well, there's also like times of a girl's life, like when she's younger, she likes to party, like she wants to be more excited and be into like hotter guys that are more sexually desirable. Then, late 20s, early 30s, she's into more comfort. I want to build a family. I want to build a life. Then later on, kind of reverting. And so then as a guy, you're like, okay, so she needs more comfort in this time, less comfort on this time. So if you want to keep this girl over the long term, you kind of have to adapt. Does this make sense?
Yeah, I'm following you.
Yeah. So, as you're at the first 5 years, your kid is born, you're probably, that picture of you with your kids sleep, the standard one on the sofa where the kid's sleeping on your thing.
Everybody
and they put that on Facebook. Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably the sexiest photo for a new mom ever. But you ask that girl 7 years later, the sexiest photo is you cleaning the pool with the shirt off. And so when you understand this, and you notice how the ebbs and flows of relationships go, they're good and then they're bad, and there's fights and there's not fights. And you kind of understand that, like, as you reach each different phase, you're kind of expecting different things from each other. And it just allows you to make conscious choices. Like, that's another reason I love common law. Every day I have to wake up and I look over at my girl and I'm like, all right, one more day, let's do it. I'm in. And then she looks over and it's the same thing. There's literally no, I don't want to, threat points, not the best word I could use, but like there's no reason for us to stay together other than we want to. And so I like that. For me, the comfort that I find and that she finds from it is that every day is a choice. Does that make sense?
That's a good frame. I like having that framework, especially if you're not married. I like that. I would say,
ultimately, dude, if marriage is the way that somebody wants to get there and they're willing to accept the potential risks, and they've weighed it up and they're like, no, this is the path I want to go, then that's fine. The only issue I have is when guys try to have it both ways. They want I must have the marriage. And then if things go south, well, now I don't want the fallout the way it was completely expected to happen. It's like, well, you should have accepted that before you decided to get married. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that. There was that famous soccer player a month ago. Did you see that? Where he transferred everything to his mom.
Oh, yeah, to his mom.
So his wife,
that was funny.
And he's worth like 180 million and she gets nothing because he gave it all to his mom. I thought that was pretty funny. But I would argue a little bit back, or not argue, but push back. And I'd love your thoughts on this.
Oh, give her.
I think I agree with you fully too on a lot of women in their 20s, right? We're obviously generalizing. This isn't always the case, but mostly I would say.
Yeah.
Women in their 20s seek that kind of guy. Then, the 30s, you can kind of see the baby making years or whatever, whatever that might be. Yeah. I think it's our job as men, and I think way too many men fall into this, man. They get married and they say, well, I got the girl, I got the job, I got the comfy house. And what they do is they stop pushing those edges, man.
Oh, yeah.
They stop leading and they become less exciting and they get the flabby dab bod And like, brother, I'm about to hit 40, right? And I'm be in the best shape of my life at 40, and I'm gonna be in the best shape of my life at 50, right? Like, and I just, my wife knows every day that I'm not only like getting better in fitness and health and finances, but dude, I'm actively becoming a better husband. I'm actively,
and I bet you anything,
her, right?
The fact that you are doing as awesome as you are, don't take this the way I'm saying it. I'm trying to mean it nicer, but I can't. This, man. But you know, it's like your wife's kind of like, well, maybe I shouldn't have a donut today because he just got back from the gym and he's oiled up. So you know what I mean? Like it forces. There's a saying I have in my second book, Praxeology Volume 1, from your work comes authority and from your authority comes expectations. And that's the idea. You set your standard, you know, be in shape, be working towards like a better business. You know, I want to make sure I'm attractive. I don't want there to be any reason if this ever dissolved to say there's nothing I could have done better. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so from that, now she's like, well, now I have to step up to meet those expectations because you have high I would assume you have high expectations for your relationship. You have it everywhere else.
My wife's a PhD and super hot, man.
Nice. But you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like most guys, you're right. They absolutely let themselves go. They think now I'm done. And then they don't have expectations for themselves. And if they don't have expectations for themselves, nobody else is going to follow expectations of theirs.
Yeah.
And that's how you end. It's like a bad feedback loop. Like who gave up first? Does it really matter though?
Yeah.
There's only one guy is going to make the effort to make it happen. Girls tend to be more reactive to this. And for them, they would just get miserable until they eventually decide to cheat or leave. But as a guy, you can make the choice. No, I'm going to be the bigger man on this one. I'm going to make myself good, have expectations, might start some fights because people are generally lazy. Like if you had, hypothetically, you get some guy who's got like a wife who let herself go and he doesn't let himself go, then obviously there's going to be some pressure on that. He's not going to be happy with her. It might cause some fights because, you know, getting that first gym visit's always the hardest one. But at the same time, you love the person and you want the relationship to succeed enough that you're willing to hurt their feelings rather than lie to them. And that's the other thing. A lot of guys lie to their wives and they let them kind of slack or like become worse and less attractive over time and a worse mother or all those different things.
Yeah, I think this is a really good topic. I love this topic because I said, I tweeted out a few days ago, man, that I think when women say things like, oh, I love dad bods, what they're really saying is, hey, I want to be mediocre and I'm cool if my partner's mediocre too, because then neither of us can, you know, misery loves company kind of thing. And if he has a big fat gut, then we can just lay around and watch Netflix and order pizza every night and nobody has to think twice about it, right? And
you have no idea how big of a rabbit hole that is, man.
So okay, let me finish the thought.
Please
kick it over to you, man. So
please.
Again, now I'm not saying, dude, if you guys together decide, man, fitness just isn't that big of a priority for us. We really like food and eating out. Awesome, man. More power to you. Everybody do what's best for you. What I'm gonna choose what's best for me and my family might be different than what's better for you. I'm not saying one way is better than the other. I'm just saying I think that's a
I am.
Well, I mean, I could argue that, you know, longer life, better sex, more energy, all these things are a lot better, but you know, you again, right? I'm not going to tell you how to live, but I do think that, man, it's up to, again, I always go back to men leading. And I think women have an amazing gift that they magnify and they amplify what we bring. And so I don't think my wife's ever looked at me and said, man, you know, like my husband has a six pack. Like if I don't get to the gym today, he's going to leave me.
Oh, of course not. It's probably it's subconscious, right?
But it's like this cycle of encouragement. Like, dude, she did 188 floors of stairs on the Stairmaster and sent me a text today. And like, I'm getting after it. And then I'm like, dude, you're killing it. I'm proud of you. And I'm like, she makes me want to be better. I make her. It's like this cycle of encouragement, right? But I think if I don't start that, if men don't start that.
Oh, yeah, it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. 9 times out of 10, right?
And a lot of guys don't realize, like, you know, that whole argument about the table, like, what do you bring to the table that everybody loves to use? And it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize what guys bring to the table. And that's like emotional stability. Like, I don't know, your girl's like any other girl, I'm assuming. They eventually have moments where like, oh, I'm crying and I don't know why, or they're emotional and they don't know why. And just you being that stable, like the oak, keeping her centered is like a superpower. Girls are heavily more neurotic than guys. That's not even me just ranting. That's like a scientific fact.
Well, just, of course, women are way more emotional creatures, right?
Yeah. And so for them, the idea that you can sit here and not panic over everything.
That men and women might be different, might be hateful. I might get deplatformed because of this, Rian.
Oh, that's fine. You can throw it all on me. You argue with me on every point of this one, and then we'll just let it sit. I don't mind being the bad guy for this one. I'll be Roddy Piper. I mean, that's a big deal for that. And as a guy, like, having a girl around, I shouldn't have to mention to a guy what the benefits are for a girl. You should kind of know. And if you don't know, then I'm not going to convince you. But that's kind of, again, it's all about those, it goes both ways. So you offer a lot to a girl that they just can't do. And because it's just a natural state of being, like me not freaking out to me is normal. But to a girl who's like 8 out of 10 neurotic, that's a superpower. The problem is I'm valuing it at 2 out of 10 when I need to think that, oh, they value it as an 8 out of 10. And if she values it that highly, then I need to make sure that and I can't think of a better way to phrase this one, but like I'm getting paid full price for what I bring, And that's all about what you want as a guy. I don't care what you want. Just make sure you understand what you're providing and that what you're receiving is something you can both live with. Because generally speaking, the stuff you offer is not valuable to you, but super valuable to her and vice versa. So both of you look like, oh, dude, I'm totally pulling a fast one on this guy. And she's like, I'm totally pulling a fast one on this. But the both of you are doing well. And that's great. And you don't have to do it. But if you want to do it, like do it well. And this is where I pushed back on the, if you want to sit there and be lazy and fat, that's fine. The problem with that is like people can't change what they're attracted to. And ultimately, if a girl's not attracted to somebody, they just don't treat them the same. I don't know how, like, have you ever seen those ones where a girl is clearly not into a guy or creeped out by a guy and how like rude and dismissive she can be?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that's not conscious. She's not deciding it. It's just like she feels like that guy's creeping her out. So she's going to be, an absolute B. And so from a relationship standpoint, yeah, she may love you. She may marry you. But if you stop becoming assertive, if you stop providing, value, you get fat, you get lazy, you don't care anymore, then you can't help but have an emotional effect on her that's going to be negative towards you. And then as a guy, you're like, but I'm paying the bills and I come home every day. And then you build up this resentment cycle. And then both of you guys just spiral into best case scenario, divorce, and worst case scenario, those horrible ones that stay together forever, but just hate each other.
Man, yeah, I've had a couple of those that are like, they've literally told me, I had a client, man, who hired me and hadn't been intimate with his wife in 12 years, man. And I'm like, how are you guys living together? It's just wild to me. But I do agree with that a lot of those points you made, man. I think we see eye on a lot of that. And I think that, a lot of guys do they sort of give up, man. And I think if you can look internally, I think people will see how you treat yourself almost, how you respect yourself, and then they treat you accordingly. I think that's at corporate level, with a job, with anything. Look, man, I had Alex Feinberg on this podcast not that long ago.
Cool.
He told me, hey, man, I got raises. I got hired at Google because I was ripped. And because people like the way that I treat, he's like, I wasn't qualified for half the jobs I got, but I'm shredded head to toe as a 36-year-old guy. Like people just see the level of respect you have for yourself, the discipline you have for yourself. Do you do what you say you're going to do? And they treat you accordingly. And I think the way our women treat us is not much different than that, right?
Yeah. Well, Archwinger, another guy, another most popular guy that nobody's ever heard of. Same thing. I loved his mental model where your woman will treat you as shitty as you let her. And the idea, and the part I love about these mental models is obviously they're made to be a little acrimonious, a little misogynist, right? They kind of tinge into your emotional thing. So it kind of gets you, like, you may get angry, you may get like revenge fantasy in your head, but at least you're paying attention. But it's good in the sense that, yeah, they just reflect how you make them feel. And so if your girl is treating you that bad, it's mostly because you've allowed her to, like you aren't enforcing your boundaries, or you're not taking that as like an indicator that maybe there's an issue here that I need to deal with. Like, it's not about the dishes. She doesn't care about the dishes. She's just mad. And that's the first thing in front of her that she can bitch about.
Yeah.
But and too many people's like, oh, it's his fault or it's her fault. It's like fault's that's something kids worry about. Like, pick that up. Oh, I didn't leave it there. It was the sister that did it. It's like, I don't care. I want it off the floor. And as a guy, I hate how you have to tell this to like grown men in like their mid 40s. It's like, dude, I don't care who dropped the relationship on the floor. Just pick it up.
That's a good
and sure, maybe the girl is too far gone. She's known too much of the guy's BS and she's gone. But that relationship is already dead then. The only thing that happened is nobody's putting two in the back of the head and left it out to pasture, right? So at the very least, you fix this same stuff, because you're probably going to get into a relationship in the future after this one. And if you make the same mistakes with this one, you're just going to end up in a second relationship that's exactly like the first. We actually had a guy who did that.
Right.
He went by the name Steve McQueen. And he was convinced, oh, my wife is a bitch. That's all her fault. And we're like, well, dude, right now you've got a great sparring partner. It's a girl that hates you, doesn't put up with any of your nonsense, and knows all of your BS and calls all your bluffs. Like, if you can game this girl, you can game anybody. It's like, no, I got it. And he dumps her. 6 weeks later, he finds a new girl who's better than his ex in every single way. And then 3 months later, he's yelling at us. He's like, dude, she's starting to act like my ex again. We're like, fucking told you, man.
You have that pattern, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense, man. I think you see that a lot. People that don't heal from those things, man, they keep repeating those patterns. Well,
Yeah.
let me ask you one thing, man. I'm interested in this in kind of the red pill, black pill kind of community, because I'll see this a lot and talk.
I have nothing but disdain for black pill goofballs, by the way.
Okay, so that's
expecting any apologies for him or anything.
Okay, no, I actually would like to clarify that then before we start. So what's the difference between red pill, black pill, I guess? Because I don't know.
Red pill was the first one. That came out back originally. The farthest I can find was in 2008. Hawaiian Libertarian talked about game being red pill. Seminal red pill post, absolutely great. Like I said, positive male identity, sexual strategy. It was just about, basically A/B testing the human condition with regards to male identity and sexual dynamics. Black pill was this weird thing where a bunch of guys would see all of the same stats and all of the same studies and all of the same stuff we talk about. And they just came to the conclusion that they're just going to give up. It's like, why even try? This looks extremely hard. And they don't. And because they're not creative, they're like, well, red is a pill. Let's make a black pill. And then there was like the girls got in and they're like, well, let's be like a good home wife. We'll call it the pink pill. And then there's that Rivellino guy with the green lines. It's like, I'll make the green pill. And everybody, it was just so derivative. And it drove me nuts because I'm like, it feels like you're a great band. And then all of a sudden 500 cover bands just start ripping off your style, but they can't play any music. And you're just like, damn it.
This is a lot of clarity for me now. Cause I actually thought that was kind of all one community, but it sounds like,
no.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better then, because I thought you probably held some of the views that some of these other guys held, but it sounds like that's totally different communities. Because I'll be honest, man, like some of these guys, the black pill, the way you described it, they hate women. I call them, they're exactly what extreme feminists are that hate men.
Yeah.
Just on the complete other side. They don't understand that the thing they hate, they are.
Well, and to be fair, my theory on this is they don't hate women. They just hate women, won't love them back.
Yeah.
And that's how it's exposing. But yeah, I think it's one of those things because guys, like, frame is a really important concept in the red pill. The idea is that you have your own mental point of origin, you have your particular worldview, and that's how you address the world, right? Like anything outside of your frame is amusing, intriguing, or fun. You'll never lose it. Somebody can yell at you and scream at you, and you don't get mad unless you want to. Nobody can manipulate you. It's the easiest way to describe frame.
Like that.
I have a whole book on it. You think I could sum it up in an elevator pitch, but that's why it took 70,000 words. Where was I going with this? Oh, yeah. So what a lot of guys with no frame do is, you get like online, you get feminists yelling how they hate men and stuff like this. And so guys like, oh, you're going to make me a villain. Well, I'll be the best damn villain ever. That'll teach you a lesson. And they're basically buying into the frame anyway by being the villain of the thing they don't like, which again, how is that any less manipulative than them telling like the male feminist ally guys who also aren't attractive, and they're just like, sneaking in trying to, well, eventually she'll give me some if I wear this pink hat and hate Trump.
Bro, those guys are the most dangerous guys on the planet in my view, man. Those guys,
dude, it's scary as hell. God Sad calls him sneaky fucker game. I thought that's the funniest thing, and he's an academic saying this too.
They are pretty wild. Well, let me ask you this then: your view on women, like just where you fall, because I do see some of the guys in this community that tend to think women might be lower, and I'll just come from my view first. And
well, lower in what way?
Well, I think like we complement each other perfectly. I think obviously males are, stronger at certain things and weaker at others, and we can complement each other really well. But I think in the end of the day, I would look at my wife and say, man, we're like creating this legacy together. We're partners in it. We're going the whole way. And I love her. I serve her every day, man. I think I get called a simp because I'll do the dishes, I'll do the laundry, stuff like that. And these alpha male dudes that won't show their pictures online will say to me, man, you're such a simp. The women should always be cooking and always be doing all this stuff. And you should just be sitting back as the man. I don't really view it that way at all, man. I think I actually love to serve my wife. I love to create that cycle of helping her, then she wants to help me. Where do you fall on that? Where do you kind of come into play on that?
Well, I love this. I'll start out with a quote. It was the red pill is considered to be such a misogynist thing because they explain the radical idea that women are people. Like when somebody says men are better than, like, that's a nonsensical statement to me. Like, better how? Better in what way? better isn't just, there's no categorical singular better.
Okay.
I'm better than my dog
I
at
think that's good
walking
to
on two
clarify.
legs. He's better than me at sleeping all damn day. It's like better, you need something to be better at. Now we can argue that, like, that's an easy argument. Are men stronger than women? Absolutely.
Sure.
I think that, and some of the other stuff, which it's true, but I don't really care. Like, I know that one study of women's brain or men's brains are 10% larger than women's, but women's supposedly have more connections between the neocortex, and black pill guys love these goofy stats like this. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, like, how does that translate into anything practical that I can use?
Yeah.
It's like a baseball stat. Hey, my RBI is 0.3 better than yours. Like, we're both shortstops. What are you talking about? Like, oh, don't worry about it, beta male. Yeah, it just seems like everybody's intent on finding this way of like proving they're superior, and they're competing with women. That's the part that gets me. It's like,
Yeah.
I see married guys do this too. They're treating their wife like it's their arch nemesis.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know about you, but I'm not going to take a 120-pound, 5'3" girl and like, that's my villain. That one right there. It's like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah, so generally speaking, I'll act superior, and like, they call it cocky funny, but yeah, superior, because it's like, I'm not fighting with her. We're not in competition. And if she starts to fight with me, I think it's cute. I treat it like if a 4-year-old calls you a poopy head, you're just going to drop kick her through the drywall. It's like, no, you're going to give her a noogie, put her finger painting on your fridge, and tell her to get out of here. Go play with your brother. Get out of here. So the whole thing, it seems kind of silly to me. And yeah, like, oh, alpha this and female that. It's like, alpha used to actually mean something, man. Like, alpha and beta were very consistent terms. Alpha meant things that was sexually desirable. Any behavior, any quality, if it made girls wet, sorry about the language, if it made them wet, it was considered alpha. And if it was the kind of thing that you would use to build a relationship from, then it would be considered beta. And there was like hormonal responses attached to it. So serotonin and oxytocin responses to behavior, those would be beta things. And things that provided testosterone or, why am I forgetting the other one? Endorphins, those would be considered alpha behavior. So it was like a very consistent and deliberate set of qualities you could use. And then the idea was, if you want to build more desire, there's stuff from this category you should probably do more of in your life. And if you wanted more comfort, you would do more of these things. And it would be contextual. When your wife is pregnant, the alpha stuff usually goes out the window. She's like in an extreme hyperbolic need of comfort. So you basically take everything from here and ignore this stuff. But then, when the kid turns 6, you got the house to yourself, you start bringing these things back in. But then it turned into this weird thing where, like, remember how godliness and piety was like that was the flex? And it's like they replaced God with alpha, a lot of secular guys. And that's why everything is alpha that's good and beta is bad. And it's one of those reasons that I am so acrimonious online. Like, I just hate this stuff so much that I would rather just like poke fun at the entire institution than seed that one. It drives me nuts. But and that's the thing. So I see you're nodding and you're smiling, and I get it, because it's like, this sounds reasonable. This kind of makes sense, because it does. And there's smart guys out there, but the problem is, like, smart guys don't run the circus. Clowns do.
That's what
they're really good clowns.
I'll be honest, Rian, when I first asked you to do the pod, I actually thought like, oh, this will be kind of cool to debate and be confrontational. And then I started reading your stuff and I'm like, I agree with like 97% of this stuff. It's really logical. It's really like based in reality. But I will say, so many guys from this red pill or black, whatever community this is, I don't know, man, they twist and they contort, and the mental gymnastics they do, it really would seem like a guy to me who's not really in that community. Like, dude, these guys hate women. They hate guys like me who are married. They think we're simps. They think we're this. Like, bro, I can post a picture of me and my daughter on a Ferris wheel, and I'm like, I love my little girl. I'm building her up. And they're like, what a simp. Like, he doesn't even have sons that are this. And it's like,
okay, full disclosure.
My daughter, man. Like, me and my kids were playing outside before. My boys were playing outside before this. It's a really weird community, but it seems like there's a lot of great guys in it and a lot of great leaders like yourself that are maybe.
Oh, I don't want to lead. The place can burn for all I care. But I see what you're saying,
man, because I feel like it needs to have a little shift,
There's this the other big concepts other than boundary enforcement is covert contracts, and the idea, if I do something, then the other person will reciprocate, and we won't talk about it. And if I do this, you do that, I'll have a problem-free life. Dr. Robert Glover, probably the best red pill canonical work. No More Mr. Nice Guy. It's a great book. It deals a lot with nice guy, codependent, validation-seeking behavior. It's huge. Anybody who's read it has seen a piece of them in there that they need to fix. 100%. But that's the problem with the covert contracts. A lot of guys, when they first get into this space, they think, I can save them. And it's like, they don't want to be saved. And all it takes is like, just try it for a year. I tried consulting at first, where it was literally just, same as you. They would add, like, I have problems with this, this, and this. And I would show like, well, this red pill mental model and this one and this one. And there's some work from these guys that deal with your direct issue. Give these things a go, focus on these parts of your life. And then we kind of work out what they would want for outcomes. 90% of the guys wouldn't do any of it. And they would come back, hey, that thing you said to do? Yeah. You know how it said, if I didn't, that this would happen? I go, yeah. Okay, well, I didn't do it and this thing happened. So what do I do now? And like, that's hard, man, to hear that 500 times.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is the consequences part. Like, there's nothing left to do.
Yeah. I mean,
but that's most guys. And they just don't want to learn. A lot of guys, what they want to do is they want to treat you like the girlfriend experience. I don't know if you ever heard of this concept for prostitutes, where like, I only sleep with like half my clients. The other half just want to cry and let me hear about their problems.
I've never heard that.
Dude, a lot of guys, they just literally want to bitch about how much they hate their wives and their children or whatever, and then just feel cathartic about it. And I was charging at $500 an hour at the end. And I'm like, it's not worth it, man. The money is not worth it. I gave it up. I'm like, nope, I'd rather just go on YouTube and explain it once and you can watch it at your leisure. But I do want to say one thing, like, in fairness, anybody who's watching this who knows me knows exactly it. The reason Matt Walsh hates me is because I find him endemic of a problem. I call it posting the F trophies for clout. And it bothers me personally as like a social media guy when people use their family as social media props. Mostly because it's like, your family is something you're supposed to love. It's very private. If you put it online, like if you put a picture of your wife online, half the internet is going to jerk off to her and half the internet is going to tell you she's a whore. And so I'm like, and then, there's always going to be a couple crazies that are going to try and harass her at work or at home or whatever. And I'm like, I love her too much to expose her to that. And children, I think, especially so. So that's the one thing that kind of, and it's not red pill, it's me specifically. It's the one thing that always gets me when I see a lot of guys, and I get it. We're all proud of the things that we love, but we have to like segment it, I think, from our online business. I don't know why I decided to tell you this whole story, but it just felt like it was important enough to mention.
The Matt Walsh thing.
Oh yeah, he hated it, dude. I made a whole ad out of that. He did a 10-minute Daily Wire comment on how I'm an asshole and I don't have a father. And I was like, my father died when I was 18, you son of a bitch.
The thing that resonates with me as you're talking about this, I think, is like, you kind of grew, your audience or your platform was kind of in that red pill community.
Yeah,
so and I think whatever you kind of talk about and speak on, those are the people you attract, right? This is something that's kind of blown my mind. I have 127,000-ish followers, right? Yeah. I run 4 retreats a year, man, where I just meet random people off Twitter. They pay money. They meet me at these big Airbnbs. We do retreats. We do all these things. Dude, every guy that comes on these is very similar to me, man. They're like a Jesus guy. They're a father. They're like family oriented. 99.9% of my interactions online, I mean, I highlight the
nothing close.
The tweets that go viral, man, are the ones that like these people come in and call me a simp. But 99% of my interactions on Twitter, on YouTube, everywhere are positive, man. I have these guys telling me, man, I want to change. I'm going to do this. I'm taking this step. I'm going here. Yeah. And so I don't know, man. I got the best social media advice I ever got from my first coach, Zach Hommel. He said, hey, man, just go live a life worthy of sharing and share it. And it's not your job to fix anybody, right? Like, they'll either see it and be inspired or it's not for them. And I feel like, man, maybe you came up in this sort of more toxic space, but if you pivoted just a little bit and went more towards the positivity, you would attract a little bit more of that. And then you'd have the guys coming to you that don't just want to complain about their wives, that would say, hey, Rian, I'm ready to take action, right?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like I said, I think it's just a different approach for me. It's, I don't ever want any kind of adulation from the audience. I don't want any of that, like Jordan Peterson, Dad 2.0 stuff. And so I actively go against it. Partially it's because I used to be an instructor at Fleet School too. And that just avoiding any of that, be your friend. And sometimes something you don't want to hear, but you need to hear. And another part of it is to separate tone from content. I think that's an important thing for guys. And again, that's because in basic training, that was the one thing they taught us. Like, I need to be yelling at you. And instead of you freaking out about it, you need to hear what I'm saying and not worry about the volume level. And so I kind of make an effort to do that well. But at the same time, Twitter specifically, like, I'm completely different on Twitter than I am on YouTube or I am on my Patreon, for example, or here with you. On Twitter, it's marketing funnels.
Yes, vaguely.
Yeah, okay. For the audience, and if you guys don't know, marketing funnels are just a way to cater the purpose of each social media platform to what your audience would want. So top of the funnel, your only goal there is just you need to learn my name. I don't care what you know me from. I don't care what I do. Top of the funnel. And that's why all this clown stuff is so popular, because you may not know, you'll know who Andrew Tate is, even though it's for horrific reasons. And he's hoping that source amnesia and a little bit of time and you'll forget about all the bad stuff. And then the idea from there is you bring somebody into the middle of the funnel. The middle of the funnel is where you speak expertly on the things that you're like, whatever it is you're expert at, that's what your middle of the funnel is for. And so if somebody just likes seeing me, shit posting on Twitter, or, like people, you dunking on people and your things, they can stay at the top. But people like, you know what, like you said, I'm going to do some research. Oh, I can see what this guy's talking about. They'll come to the middle of the funnel. Mm-hmm. And you're not doing dick jokes on, for example, YouTube or podcasts or whatever. And then from there, you have a bottom of the funnel. And that's for people who really like the stuff. And they're like, dude, if this guy had a book or something, I would totally get it. And then those people will invest in the bottom of the funnel. And that's the part where you make your money. And the benefit of that is if somebody's just here for goofiness, you're not sitting there selling them things 24/7. So they think they're just being like average. Like people hate being sold to. They really do. Hate sales, love marketing. And then the people there who are there just to learn, but not necessarily to invest. And they don't really care for the drama. And so the idea there is like, and I probably do it a little more, what's the word? A little more, I separate mine a little more than other people, I guess. Okay. So that's the one thing that people say is when they see me on YouTube, it's like, dude, you seemed like such an ass, but I come over here and you're actually like a normal human being. I'm like, yeah, it's, I know for me, I just had like a lot of guys where your approach, I would love your approach if I could. Unfortunately, this is the one I've chosen. And it's the one that works well for me. And it's just,
yeah, I think that's
even in the Navy, I had to scrub toilets, right? I didn't like scrubbing toilets, but I didn't get to deploy until I did that. So I consider that like the scrubbing toilets, digging ditches part of the job.
Yeah, which is fine. I think it's great that different people have different strategies. When I talk to smart people like you who tell me marketing funnels and this and that, I really always realize I don't know anything about business, that what I do is I wake up every day. I just be myself, and whoever's attracted to that is cool. Who's not, that's cool too. I'm just going to be me and live my life, and whatever happens, man. I realize like when I talk to really smart people that, man, I could be so much better at business if I cared about funnels and things like that. I just don't really care, man, to be honest. Like,
yeah. But it's whatever you want to invest in, right? Like, obviously you got a good enough life. You've picked your priorities and they work for you. And that's the other part that the red pill is great about, because it's just tools. It's praxeology. It's not an ideology. If you like these parts, take them, use them. If you don't like these parts, don't use them. And I think this funnel, exactly the perfect example. You're like, I don't need the funnel part. I'm good like this. I'm like, great.
Yeah, I think that's good. I got to ask you one question too. The Rollo Tomasi, is that the green line guy?
No. The green line guy is this guy named Rivellino.
Yeah. Okay. Rivellino. Yeah.
He hates me too.
All these guys in the community hate you, man. That's hilarious.
Only the clowns. And I make sure to earn that every time. Okay. This guy, he was a pickup artist who moved to Spain. And it's been a while since I've had to tell the story. So I'll get the details right though. Just give me a sec. He moved to Spain because, in his words, the age of consent there was younger than in the States. It was 14 by 16.
Oh man. Yeah.
Whatever. No judgment from me. Legal's legal. I'm like, But he was also complaining a bunch how he had lived there for 10 years and he'd only ever slept with 8 girls. And I'm like, that's kind of an odd flex from a pickup artist account. And then that's when he started talking about Jason Statham and then the green lines, where he just takes some pseudoscience. Like, if you ever lean in on a photo, then she's going to be sleeping with your boss and stuff.
Yeah.
And Justin Wang, who's like a pretty popular YouTuber out of New Jersey, I believe. He has a metal band. Great guy. Awesome content if you ever watch it. He found this green line stuff, and he did a live stream on it one day. And so people joined it just to see like rubbernecking. Let's see what the freak show's got today. And then he blew up from that. Okay. And now he's stuck as the green line guy. And so all he knows how to do is like exaggerate that to ridiculous proportions. And that's why the big joke right now is for anything that happens to put green lines around it.
Oh, bro, it's amazing the number of tweets that I'll have a guy crop it and green line and send to my DM and be like, she's going to leave you in a year because you're leaning over to kiss her neck or whatever. And I'm like,
yeah,
bro, you are
just remember
so
too, that
wild.
whole thing came. That whole thing came from a pickup artist who couldn't pick up women.
That is crazy, man.
Who just got made fun of by a YouTuber who was known for like obscure His biggest claim to fame was talking about this obscure Mario Brothers porn parody that was like that Nintendo had bought up all the copies from. Like that's the kind of
Man, that's
yeah, he's one of
wild.
those. But it's the whole thing is just so surreal.
Yeah, we
And then when
laugh
I
at
see
that.
this people and everybody's taking these guys seriously, that's all I can remember.
That's funny, man. I like you shedding light on that because me and the like other fitness bros kind of in our community, we laugh at that all the like our boy Zach Hommel is like literally the most masculine. The dude deadlifts 800. He's just an absolute savage. And like
Nice.
he'll be like lean in to kiss his wife, and then he'll have 10 guys like telling him, bro, you're a simp, and she's leaving. We
Yeah.
just laugh at this stuff all the time, man. It's pretty funny. I like knowing the origin of that now. Now I'll laugh in my head every time I see that, man.
Every time, just think Jason Statham.
Yeah,
That's all you gotta think.
we call him the Jason Statham guy because we can never remember. That's funny, man. Well,
Yeah, I'm convinced
bro,
that's what he looks like too. Yeah, that's funny because like all these guys, there's always for all these people and that's the point. He was known for something completely ludicrous, ridiculous, insane, not true, but nobody remembers that anymore. Now he's just the green line guy. But everybody forgets that he was like wanting to pick up the youngest girls he couldn't do it, failed at everything, and now he's like, but Jason Statham and green lines. I bet you anything 5 years from now, people won't remember anything about like the Romanian arrests or the Bugatti the confiscating. Tate will probably be a devout Muslim. Like nobody remembers Peterson either. Remember Peterson when he used to be like clinical psychology lectures? Like that's how I remember him. He taught me how to write my first time when I emailed him back when he was still University of Toronto professor. And now he's that guy on the Daily Wire, like, take that, woke feminists. I'm like, who is wearing him as a skin suit?
Man, well, dude, I can keep chatting with you all day. This is fun. I think this goes to show too that I think if I like when people were tagging you on that post, I was like, oh man, me and this guy probably don't see eye to eye on much. And I think it shows.
We don't have to though.
What'd you say?
We don't have to.
Yeah,
I mean, we see ultimate like
people don't need to agree on everything. That's a weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a weird thing. I get people unfollowing me. Oh, I don't agree with you on this, so I unfollow. And I always say the same thing. Like, if your standard is that we agree on everything, then you should follow no one, myself included. That's weird,
Just stare in the mirror and kiss that man in the mouth. That's clearly what you're looking for.
It's really weird, but I find it cool, man. That just to get to know you a little bit better, to see your work. I think you're really funny, witty. I think you provide a good service to a lot of guys that come in and maybe are disillusioned by the green line guy or this other stuff, and they can actually get some sense and some good relationship advice or life advice, man. So I appreciate the stuff you put out there, man. And thanks for hopping on, brother. This has been fun.
Hey, no worries. Anytime. Like I said, it's always
laughing.
My only critique, I mean, not critique, but the only thing I ever look for is just somebody that's interesting. Beyond that, I could care less about like any of the rest of the clown show nonsense. And you've been interesting, and I'm enjoying this. So I'm like, that's all I could ever ask for. Thank you very much.
I appreciate that, brother. Well, dude, can you tell people where to find you or check you out? Or let's get people into the top of your funnel now that I know what to follow.
Oh, dude. Man. Well, Twitter's the easiest one. That's just _Ryan_Stone, Ryan with an I. And that one's mostly shitpost hot takes, but I do make an effort to at least make the stuff have something that, like, if you know where it's coming from, it makes sense. But if you're actually interested more in my specialty is sexual dynamics and positive male identity within a relationship or marriage, the easiest way to start on that stuff is my YouTube channel. Again, Ryan Stone. I would suggest you start with the playlist on there called the Sidebar Series, because that's all the work that like 1,000 guys have been doing for about 12 years now. That's codependence, validation seeking, nice guy behaviors from Glover, how to get rid of that. Manuel Smith with his assertiveness training. David Clare and Franco, practical female psychology, understanding this stuff. Or Dr. David Buss, why women have sex, to get rid of a lot of the misconceptions you have about the differences between men and women. And the idea is like, these books are great and they're very helpful. And then what I offer is like a something to follow along with. So that way, because most guys have to read them like 2 or 3 times over 2 or 3 years. So what I try to do is give you all the pieces there. So you can get through it the first time. And then depending on the audience, I have the Red Morning podcast, which is Saturdays at 9 o'clock till 11 Eastern Standard. And last place is Amazon. I have 2 books right now, and third one's on the way. First one is called Fuck Files. That's it's Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Men mixed with Neil Strauss's The Game mixed with Bukowski's Women. The idea was like all 3 of those books were kind of missing something. So I tried to take my personal experiences, raised on a ranch, deploying in the Navy, meeting women, and then how I tie that into living a good life. And at the end, finding a girl, settling down, that kind of thing. The second book Praxeology Volume 1 frame. And it's how to build your own mental point of origin, how not to let the outside world manipulate you into doing things you don't want to do. And then Volume 2 is going to be coming out end of year once I finish it. That's going to be on dread for guys who are in struggling marriages and want to learn how not to be taken for granted again and to put themselves in a good position to be in a better relationship, either with the girl they're with now or with the next one. It's a long speech. Thank you for your patience.
That's important though, man. I like that. Thanks. And we'll link all that stuff you do below, man. I appreciate you hopping on, man, taking some time out of your day. I appreciate it, man. Everybody you out there listening, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation too. This is Tyrompers No Limit Podcast. Go be kind to yourself. Go be kind to others. Let's bless up, baby. Let's change the world. Go have the greatest day of your life. Oh, dude, who we got hopping on at the end, man?
This one's Sagan. It's dinner time, so he's going to keep bugging me until I bring him up.
All right, Sagan, you have a good night. Ryan, I appreciate you, brother. Have the greatest day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.